came to my senior year, when I stopped seeing Larry Nassar, I barely graduated high school. I lost the ambition and the vision I had for my future. This has caused me the loss of many relationships. I cannot look at my mother the same. I called my mother after talking to an attorney, and she expressed how relieved she was that I was doing something about what he did to me. I was so confused. After talking with her more about it, she knew what he was doing, but thought it was a medical procedure, just like everyone else. She said that it made her feel uncomfortable and that this is why she stopped going to my appointments. I felt abandoned. I lost faith and trust in her role as a mother. Since this has come out, it has made me very hypervigilant on whether anyone knows who I am. Who can I trust to tell, and how do I tell them something like this? Also, if I do tell them, what if someone overhears? Will people look at me differently? Will people judge me, or will they pity me because they feel bad? I will not call you a monster, because you are afraid of monsters, and I am not afraid of a sick, disgusting coward like yourself. I will not explain what he did to me, because he is the type of human being that would love to hear and mentally relive his abuse. But I will say this: he always had his eyes closed. I thought it was weird. Maybe he was mentally picturing my muscles. Who am I to question him? He is the doctor, and I am the patient. He would always make low, grunting growls that now haunt my dreams. Larry Nassar manipulated me psychologically. He made me deny how I felt when I was screaming inside to stop what was happening, because he acted so calm, like nothing ever happened. He made me trust him and not second-guess his medical procedure. What is worse, what Larry Nassar did to me, or that MSU served me to a knowing pedophile? The only thing MSU has done right is hire Andrea Munford to bring this all out. I tried to take steps to not let this happen. I wore sweatpants so he could not do it. He then provided old boxers altered to have Velcro on the sides for easier access. My question for you, Larry Nassar, were they your own personal old boxers? There are things in my past that I am not proud of. This has made me question what all details to include on how this has changed me for fear of being judged. I would never have to worry about these details if I never had to live the nightmare of Larry Nassar being my doctor. Even though I am not a famous gymnast, I still matter, and my story is relevant. I still hurt too. With all of the attention on gymnasts and not what he has done has taken the focus away and may deter girls like me to come forward and deny that something's happened to them because they are not a gymnast. Victim 48.
Thank you very much. You can let Victim 48 know that. I do appreciate her coming forward with her impact statement. She does matter, and she's obviously very worthy of love. Tell her thank you.
We are next on the video, Your Honor, so it'll just take me a minute to put this back.
Okay.
Your Honor, the next statement you will hear from is from a survivor who wishes to be publicly identified. Her name is Emily Winter, E-M-I-L-Y, last of W-I-N-T-E-R. She is number 212 on our master list, and we're having some issues with our speaker, so I hope this will be loud enough.
All right, maybe. Is there any way that it can go through our system? Where's our IT person?
We could probably use the Polycom. I know we did that before, but there's a whole issue with the live feed, right? It wasn't working yesterday.
We don't have a barrel or the IT. Okay, let's try it. And if it isn't working, perhaps we could go on to somebody else and then come back to it, okay? So as long as I can hear it, that's...
Will the mic amplify it or no? It's a speaker.
No, it doesn't. That's just a recorder.
The opportunity to speak.
Okay, I can hear her.
Your Honor, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and for accommodating me via video from my home in London. My name is Emily Winter, and sadly my story is like so many other brave women who have spoken out in the last few weeks. My interactions with Larry Nassar were few and brief, but his deliberate actions in those minutes have sent ripples into nearly every corner of my life. years later. At 5 years old, my mother enrolled me in my first ballet class. I was hooked. And I quickly picked up other disciplines and opportunities to dance. In 2001, at 13 years old, I felt the telltale pop in my right hip during a dress rehearsal. For the next 6 months, my determined and loving mother took me to various doctors who repeatedly told me that they could find nothing wrong and that I was plenty flexible. All the while, I continued to experience excruciating and limiting hamstring pain. I felt hopeless and alone, afraid I would have to give up the sport I loved. Finally, a physical therapist recommended a sports medicine doctor of osteopathy at MSU, who had extensive experience with flexible young athletes as the USA Gymnastics Olympic team doctor. I felt incredibly lucky to be seen by a man who had been entrusted with the care of some of my childhood idols. Some of those same idols looked down at me from the wall in his office during my first appointment, seeming to reconfirm that Larry Nassar was the man for the job. Nassar diagnosed the source of my pain easily, an avulsion fracture of my right ischial tuberosity, and said it was a common injury for growing, strong, flexible young girls like me. He'd seen it many times over. I felt relieved and grateful to have an answer, a verdict, a validation of my pain, and I felt blessed to have been seen by a doctor who recognized that something was wrong and knew how to fix it. For 15 years, I told this tale to a great Olympic doctor who had given me a lifeline and a cure when everyone else told me I was fine. I told the story with pride and gratitude, and each time I did, I left out the pieces of the story that my 13-year-old self was unable to process or admit. But I never forgot them. It infuriates me that 16 years after my appointment with Nassar, I lie awake at night trying to comprehend what happened. I ask myself questions that boldly have repulsive and soul-crushing answers. How much of this examination was legitimate medical treatment for my benefit, and how much was sexual abuse for his? Why isn't there an obvious answer? And how could I not recognize what he was doing? Now I do, and it makes me sick. With his wall of grateful athletes hanging above me on his exam table, my mother and I waited hopefully, anxiously, for him to tell us he had an answer. We were desperate to believe in him. Everything in that moment, absolutely everything, was stacked in his favor, making it too easy for him to take advantage of me. Your Honor, I hope I may address him directly. This has been one of the most difficult points for me to come to terms with. You preyed on the vulnerable. You had the power and the position to help and to heal, but you chose to harm and to destroy. Why? How could you take any pleasure in inflicting pain and humiliation on others? You gave me a diagnosis. Why could you not just leave it at that? Why did you have to take something as well? Your Honor, the system is not just flawed. What we have seen in the last few weeks is that it is highly effective at protecting the worst kind of depravity. There is no excuse for any person or institution that failed to protect the innocent children and young women, myself included, who walked through his doors. His reign of terror should have ended in disgrace 2 decades ago. I should have never met him. MSU is similarly culpable for failing to report and to investigate when young women came forward with accusations in the late 1990s. How could they let this happen? And how different my experience coming forward has been from those of the girls and young women who raised alarm bells over the last 20 years. I have had the benefit of being believed because others had the courage to speak first. Larry Nassar's fate is sealed. My words here today make no change to the way he finishes out his days, but they are important. I hope that in saying them and telling my story, they might give someone, somewhere, the courage to stand up and speak the truth. Your Honor, I encourage you to sentence Larry Nassar to the maximum allowed under the plea, to send a message to the victims and abusers everywhere. And finally, since this part of my life will live within me forever, I make it my mission to live a full, happy, engaged life, to fight for systemic change in the way that we think about and talk about sexual abuse, to educate and protect the young and the vulnerable, to demand reform and justice for the organizations that enable the most prolific sexual abusers in sporting history to operate unchecked for more than 20 years, and to embolden victims everywhere to speak out. Thank you.
So, Ms. Povolitis, if you could let Ms. Winter know that we had the opportunity to hear her statement and to watch her, and certainly her words were impactful, and I think she will embolden others. So thank her very much for taking the time to make the video and submit it to the court.
I will. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the next survivor you will hear from is Ashley Erickson. I have her photograph on the screen. Her parents are going to be speaking on her behalf. She's had some illness this week. This is Orville and Lynn, right? Yeah. Erickson.
I'm sorry, your voice dropped. Orville and
Lynn.
Lynn?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
And you are the parents of Ashley?
Yes, we are.
Are you Ashley?
Yeah.
Are you feeling okay?
Not currently. I would appreciate your phone.
Okay. Are you all right, though?
Yeah.
Okay, let us know if you need anything, okay?
Thank you.
All right. And you are going to make the statement, Mr. Erickson?
I'm going to make the statement on behalf as the dad.
Okay.
Ashley read her statement gave her statement
Right.
last week in the
Right.
family. Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. My name is Orville Erickson, and I am the father of Ashley Erickson. I must say I never thought in a million years I would be addressing the court as I am today, but regretfully, here I am. I used to say Ashley was a patient of Dr. Nassar, but now I regret calling her a victim of Larry Nassar, but now she's also a survivor, and of his despicable behavior. He is a person who has taken more from me and my family than I could ever have imagined. I will try to tell you how this has affected me as a father, a husband, and a person. Some things I will not share because they are too personal. I have watched my daughter go from a vibrant, happy young woman to a person who has anxiety attacks, nightmares, nervous tension, and trust issues. I have watched her relationship with her brothers and family members, friends, and co-workers disintegrate. I have watched her lose jobs and her goals because she has a hard time functioning on a consistent basis, not knowing when she will have a flashback or a panic attack. I have watched my wife try to cope with deep regret and guilt since she was in the room during the abuse that this was presented as treatment She feels she should have protected Ashley from this abuse. She is not the only person here with those feelings, including me. I was also in the room when that was being done, was shielded from my view. I know as a father I feel like I should have done something more, so we wouldn't be here today. But I was conned like most everybody else in this room. For myself, I have lost trust in most things I encounter nowadays. I have a hard time trusting my doctors, things I am told and things I read. I don't trust the college my daughter used to attend, and I thought I would try to protect her. I seldom buy a newspaper or watch the news anymore. I have become withdrawn and moody, and my upbeat, outgoing personality has taken a tremendous hit. To say I am hurt and angry is an understatement. I know none of us will fully recover or forget what has been done by you, Larry, over the past 20 years, but I hope and pray we can learn to cope in some way. Like I said before, I never thought in a million years I would be standing here before the court. It is because of your despicable actions, Larry, that we are here. For that I will struggle for a long time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Erickson, for being here and making the statement. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Lynn Erickson. I am the mother of Ashley Erickson, who is a survivor of Larry Nassar. I am one of the moms who sat in the room while my daughter was sexually assaulted by Larry under the guise of medical treatment. I want to express what this has done to our daughter, to me, and to our entire family. I want to present it from a parent's point of view. In the past couple of weeks, the world has heard from a group of young girls and women who are now united as sister survivors. These brave young women have become a strong and mighty force whose voices have been heard. Their voices have touched this nation. Their voices have given me the strength to address the court today as a parent. I debated whether to pull my request to speak, but their voices made me realize that as a mother, I have an important message also. Ashley was a gymnast for many years, beginning at the age of 8. In college, Ashley was a competitive cheerleader until her injuries forced her to stop. Our daughter's health and well-being, as with all of our children, has always been a priority to my husband and me. When Ashley broke her foot doing a back handspring in 1999, at the age of 11, we were referred to Larry by his wife, who was employed by our pediatrician's office. Larry put a cast on her foot, and thus our history began. A history that would change all of our lives. Ashley was Larry's patient for 17 years, ending in August of 2016. She was probably one of his last patients before he was removed from MSU. You were the knight in shining armor to so many athletes who turned to you for healing, or so we believed. Now you are seen by everyone as a dark, evil being. Our experience began as everyone else's. Larry groomed us to trust him. He made us believe that he truly cared about Ashley and her well-being. With all of her sports injuries, we trusted that he really did want to help her body heal. Over the years, through August of 2016, this trust grew. We shared family stories. He gave Ashley gifts from the Olympics. He made us feel as though we were friends. Larry called her his miracle patient because of all of her surgeries and serious complications. And to think that I defended you. But Rachel opened our eyes. I told her last week that she was my hero. The bottom fell out from under us when it came to light. that what I thought was legitimate treatment was just a cover-up for your own personal sick behavior. How many of those appointments you scheduled for her were really necessary? How many? At times you saw her twice a week, other times monthly. How much money did we spend unnecessarily over those 17 years? I will never forget the day or time when Ashley told me what you did to her. Not once, but many, many times. My heart sank and I felt numb inside. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs. It felt as though I had fallen in a deep, dark hole. The guilt came instantly because I was there. But then I had to tell her father. He had been in the room on a few occasions. How could I have let this happen to my precious daughter? I just wanted to hold her and protect her. Our job as parents is to protect our children. I failed my own daughter. I wondered why you always sent your medical students out of the room when you treated Ashley. Now I know why. The guilt that I feel will never completely leave me. Every day I think about it. How could I let this happen to my child? Larry, you did this to me and every parent in this room and all around the country. You did this to us. You dishonored my trust. You dishonored the trust of all your patients and their parents. You violated our daughters in the most despicable manner. You did that to Ashley and countless other athletes who came to your evil chamber. When I see her when I see her quiet tears, it breaks my heart. Through counseling, I will learn to live with this guilt so that eventually my pain will diminish. You will live with what you have done to Ashley, to our family, and everyone else for the rest of your life in a prison cell. Because of you, I and I'm sure others have developed trust issues with the medical profession. How can someone who took an oath to help others sexually assault children and young women? How could you do that? You used your prestige as a world-renowned, highly respected physician to your own personal advantage. You violated your oath as a physician. You demeaned your profession. How sad. You could have had it all, and you threw it all away. Watching our daughter experience severe anxiety attacks and live through the terror of nightmares where she relives what you did to her is so difficult for my husband, our sons, and our daughter-in-law. Our lives have been a living nightmare at times due to her suffering. Through counseling, we are healing, but it is a long process. We will never know the true impact of how your assaults have affected her over the years, but listening to over 150, and the number's much higher now, speak has helped us to understand how many assaults how your assaults have affected so many. We will never really know how many times you assaulted Ashley over the 17 years, but once was too many. When a child is assaulted, it affects so many people. Because of the bravery of the sister survivors, we know what you did to them. Their healing is our #1 priority. However, your behavior and the assault of our daughters has also affected many layers of people: parents, siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, coaches. The list goes on. People across the country who have been affected is profound. I'm so very proud of all the sister survivors. They are brave, courageous young women who have made a huge statement. We will not tolerate the sexual abuse. We will not tolerate the violence of our bodies. All young girls and women deserve respect, especially defenseless children. Young girls and women are not playthings. You, Larry Nassar, messed with the wrong group of women. I'm sure you have figured that out by now. You got caught, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison. The culture of men such as yourself and your view of young women and girls must change. All women have a right to protection from men like you. Our culture must change, and it starts here. To quote Allie Raisman, shame on those who actively protected Larry, and shame on all those who look the other way. Those who look the other way are just as guilty. If only someone would have listened back in the 90s. If only a coach, a trainer would have listened. If only someone would have taken the proper steps to protect the gymnasts and all the other athletes. If only someone would have listened over the past 20-plus years. If only. None of us would be here today, and my precious daughter and so many others would never have been sexually assaulted by you. It's time for those who stayed quiet to speak. It's time for all of you to do the right thing. It's time to take responsibility. MSU trustee Joel Ferguson recently said that more is happening at MSU than this Nassar thing. Really, Mr. Ferguson? This Nassar thing has impacted our nation. It has impacted the sport of gymnastics. It has impacted the very integrity of Michigan State University and its entire athletic community. The nation is not hearing about all the great things being accomplished at MSU, and that list is endless. The nation is hearing about the worst pedophile in our nation's history, a former doctor of MSU. It's time for all of those who have kept quiet to speak. It's time to help the survivors. The sister survivors' voices have been heard. There are now investigations concerning how criminal sexual assaults were allowed for so many years at Michigan State University. Holt Public School students have been asked to speak up if anyone was abused. The Corella Ranch is under review, as well as USAG, and the list continues to grow. Changes will be made. The bond of sister survivors and their families have become a strong, powerful force that will not go away. To those of you who have asked, where were the parents? Do not judge us until you have walked in our shoes. And I pray to God that you never do. Stop blaming the parents and the victims. You will never understand the core of this monster and what he has done because you have not lived through it the way we have. My advice to all of you who question us, do not listen and judge. Listen and react by helping to rid our society of pedophiles. Help to educate others about the warning signs of pedophiles. Be a voice for change. Educate yourself and educate your children. I thought I had educated my daughter, but I didn't do a good enough job. I told her to trust doctors. May I address Larry? It's
Very briefly.
It will be brief. Larry, Ashley is a smart, articulate young woman who has dreams and ambitions. She has drawn strength and power from all of the sister survivors. For our family, our goal is to ensure that she heals over the next several years. As she told you, you will not define who I am or who I will be. I will be strong again. We're proud of her for addressing you as she did. Finally, Larry, a man I trusted with my daughter. God asked us to forgive our transgressors, and I pray that one day I can forgive you and what you have done to Ashley, our family, and so many more. You have betrayed Ashley, you betrayed Orv, and you betrayed me. Your Honor, I ask that you give Larry the maximum sentence allowed under the plea agreement. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Well, Ms. Erickson, I'm glad that you changed your mind and decided to speak and you didn't withdraw your name, as you indicated you were thinking about it. Because your words and your sentiment, your emotions speak to all the parents that I've heard and may hear that have gone through this. And so I appreciate you sharing that with me because you described the impact of things that happened to your daughter, and that's the purpose of the sentencing hearing, for me to understand the impact. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Your Honor, the next survivor you will hear from has agreed to be publicly identified. She brought with her to court today a photograph that we're attempting to update our PowerPoint with.
Okay. Is it your IT making that noise?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
good. I didn't know if I
My
needed to be
apologies, Your Honor.
concerned or not.
Look at that. We got it going.
Okay.
Your Honor, for the record, this is Katie Black, and she's going to be speaking with you. She is with her father, I believe, right, and her coach. And just so the record's clear, the other child in the picture is her sister, and her father has given permission for her sister's photograph to be disseminated as well.
Okay, and we don't need to use the sister's name though, but you're okay. Are you Mr. Black?
That's fine. She does include, I'm not sure how, I haven't read her statement,
Okay.
but she does have her sister included in there with her sister's permission.
Okay, but you are Mr. Black, is
Yes,
that
I
right? Okay. Are you a minor, Katie?
No.
Okay. Anytime you're ready, I would like to hear your statement.
First, Your Honor, one issue that I dealt with was accepting not only what happened, but how it affected me. Sitting in court, hearing all these fellow survivors who suffered with me and the emotional trauma they dealt with has let me feel that I'm not alone. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to let each of us speak and for showing that our voices matter. The first time I saw Larry, I had hurt my lower back. I was given a recommendation for the famous gymnastics doctor, and when I walked into his office and saw all his signed pictures, I couldn't believe it. I was so excited, nearly bouncing with joy. But I also wondered why world-famous Olympic doctor would see me. I was a mere level 7 gymnast who was turning 12 next month, and my injury was probably minor. My fears dissipated when he entered the room. He was so friendly. He asked questions about me and talked to my younger sister, happily answering all of her seemingly endless questions. He wasn't just interested in my injury, he was interested in who I was. Then he had me change from my jeans into shorts. They weren't those weird hospital shorts, they were his gym shorts for little girls. He told me I had minor scoliosis. We'd have to watch it very carefully as I grew. One of my legs was slightly shorter than the other, which made my hips rotate and caused me pain, although his adjustments could fix it. He adjusted me then. I remember lying on my back on that table, with one of my legs pushed all the way back in a split, with my foot hitting the table next to my head. He was so impressed with my flexibility, pulling my leg back just to push it down again. He excitedly explained how there was no resistance. My leg would just glide all the way to the table and it didn't even stretch me. He then stretched the rest of me, testing how far each part of my body would move. I was so proud in that moment. The famous Dr. Nassar was impressed by me. At the end, though, I was told that I had lazy butt. Apparently, I used my hyperflexibility to complete skills instead of using my back muscles, and I was given a list of exercises. I was disappointed that my back hurt because I was doing things wrong, but at least it would be an easy fix. As I was leaving, he reminded me to always wear shorts or tight pants like leggings so that he could get to my back. He laughed, saying if I didn't, I would have to wear his shorts again. It was awkward, but I brushed it off and said I would. The next time I was getting ready for an appointment with him, I thought about his pants rule, and I remember looking through my clothing, wondering what was accessible enough for him. It felt a little strange having to wear a specific thing to a doctor, but who was I to judge his methods? A few months later, I began my slow spiral into depression. I had so much faith in the exercises, but it was supposed to start helping, and it didn't. Hadn't been long, but I used to fight every day for extra time on each event so I could practice gymnastics longer. I was stuck on physical therapy, conditioning, and watered-down skills, and eventually I just started practicing through the pain, claiming that my back was good enough, and I continued to see Larry, hoping each time for a new plan since it wasn't working. It never did, though. Years later, he was away at a competition, and I saw a different doctor that worked with him. I've learned that she knew about him, but at least she ordered an MRI. I learned that I have a herniated disc. As time went by, it became worse until there was numbness and tingling in the pinched nerve down to my toes, which is when I saw her. I guess I didn't just have lazy butt. I suffered for years thinking it was my own fault that my back wasn't getting better and I wasn't trying hard enough, and he was wrong. But he wasn't actually wrong because he just never bothered to check what was wrong. He gave me exercises for everything. Once one of his assistants checked my ankle before Larry to see how well he could diagnose it, but he grabbed the wrong one. He was telling me all the things wrong with it and how it's not supposed to bend anywhere near that far. I let it go because it was amusing. I hadn't realized my ankle was so damaged. When I told him it was the other one, he was shocked. He thought I was confused because it was obviously damaged. To his surprise, he found that my other ankle was much worse. He couldn't stop telling me how terrible they were. Larry examined them and agreed, lamenting that the ligaments were extremely stretched out. That day, I left with the same list of ankle exercises that I'd gotten every other time before. Only I had the instructions to do them multiple times a day, no exceptions, to stop being lazy, because obviously I was lying when I said that I did them, because my ankles wouldn't be this bad if I did them every day like I was supposed to be. They hurt every waking moment, and it got to the point where I could only do vault or floor every practice, because doing both was too much pounding and too much pain. Walking too long was torture. Running made me want to scream. Jumping made me clench my teeth together, and tumbling made me question the sport I love so much. I tried physical therapy for my back and my ankles, and after a few months they told me to give up because it wasn't helping either of them. I taped my ankles every single practice because they were so unstable, and the 2-minute walks between high school classes was painful. They'd throb as I tried to fall asleep at night, yet I got the same list of exercises from him every single time. Last year I had ankle reconstruction surgery on both of them. I spent nearly my entire second semester at college in a walking boot, but it was worth every second. I can run without pain, and I can even jump. My ankles are fixed now, but no thanks to him. I want to know how hard it is to just say that my ankles are permanently damaged and that they won't recover without surgery. Why did I get those stupid exercises over and over and over? Why do I own 3 different TheraBands and have an ankle brace that I would wear daily? And why did my dad have to buy 2 boxes with 32 rolls of athletic tape at a time, multiple times a year? Maybe it was his way to keep me coming back. He didn't just abuse me, he prevented all of my injuries from healing. I always wanted to do college gymnastics, and at the end I could have made it on a team somewhere. But I was in so much pain that I couldn't stand it anymore. I quit gymnastics and I gave up my dream, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. It's one dream I'll never be able to achieve. Chalk was the air I breathed, and my hands were tough and calloused. Sore muscles were the norm, and falling made great big wet crash videos. Gymnastics was my entire life. I'll never love something as much as that sport, but I don't know if I'll ever do it again. I can't even think about it without thinking about him. He ruined my sport and my body, and he ruined me. I'd always been shy before I'd met him. But then I started to become afraid of people. Over the next couple years, I became increasingly wary of others. Couldn't trust anyone. I started flinching when anyone touched me. I would become tense, with the instinct to run when I was hugged. I couldn't stand my own sister hugging me. I could see how much it hurt her, how much she felt like I didn't care about her. I felt guilty and miserable. Watching her smiles turn into hurt and disappointment, but being touched was terrifying. I started distancing myself from people so they couldn't hurt me. How could I know which people I trusted would hurt me too? I can't be in a relationship because I can't feel comfortable enough with anyone. How do I know they won't manipulate and hurt me too? I developed general anxiety as well as social anxiety, and the more out of control my life felt due to him, the more I ate. Eventually I stopped eating because it was something that I could control. But I ended up giving in because I couldn't practice gymnastics due to the weakness. I have flashbacks, and hearing about him affects my ability to focus on anything else for days. Right now, I should be studying for my exams next week, but I'm here. I should be focused on my classes, but he keeps coming back to my mind, and I can barely sleep at night. He's a nightmare that won't end, but maybe I'll wake up after this. MSU was my dream school my whole life. My dad went there, and whenever we visited Larry for an appointment, my dad gave us a tour of the campus. I went to gymnastics camp there, and at the end, my parents could barely drag me away. It felt like my school already. It is my school now, and it is still my dream. I love my university, but I don't love how it's handled Nassar. MSU has disappointed me, and because of its lack of action against him, many people were hurt. It hurt me personally to learn how many people there defended, hid, or even helped him. I hope we will move forward from here. I want to be proud of every part of my university. My sister in the picture who did gymnastics with me, she loves to talk, and she's curious about everything. She always has this amazing excitement about the world. I can't tell you how many times I've heard an adult joke that I was so quiet around because with her around, I didn't even have a chance to say anything. She liked Larry immediately. Not only was he the famous doctor, but he would answer all of her questions, from what do ligaments do to what was it like at the Olympics. Larry was so personable, caring, and interested in our lives. He loved to talk, and they got to know each other quickly. He'd text us about our injuries and let both of us see him in the same hour. It felt like we were friends, and he really cared. He seemed so nice, but I slowly felt more and more uncomfortable with him. My back never stopped hurting. The amount of pain never even decreased. I didn't know why, but I hated being there. His back exercises, he'd say I wasn't doing them right. He'd teach me the proper forms for his exercises again, touching each muscle that was supposed to be engaged. In this particular plank, I was supposed to tighten my vaginal muscles first, then my glutes, and then my core. I kept coming out of form and laying back onto the table, hoping he'd realize how uncomfortable I was, hoping I could subtly move his hands away. He told me to stop loosening up, and that when I was tightening my vaginal muscles, that his fingers should feel it tighten. Eventually, I realized he wasn't going to stop, and he wasn't going to move his hands, so I did it. I lay awake at night wondering if it was okay, and I didn't know. But I just went to sleep and forgot about it. Before that, I didn't know why I hated being there. There's always the little things that didn't feel right. Why did he need to take my shirt off to stretch my shoulders? Why were his hands always a little lower on my back than they needed to be? Everyone else loved him so much, though I thought I was being ridiculous. My sister would bounce with joy when we went to see him, and soon I began watching her. She was always there for her wrist, and occasionally her ankle. I didn't realize when I started watching her the anxiety I felt, as I hardly dared to look away when he touched her wrist. I began watching his hands to see where they were. I began watching her face for any signs of being uncomfortable. It was always fine, and she still loved him so much. Eventually, I stopped going to see him. I couldn't make myself go anymore. If I complained about my back at an appointment with him was suggested, and I always quickly backpedaled, saying I would do my exercises more and I had been slacking like he said. Soon I started saying that my back didn't hurt anymore. Quietly did exercises in my room and learned to hide my grimace at practice. When I saw him for my ankles, he'd offer to look at my back, and I would deny any semblance of pain existed so he wouldn't touch me. Soon I couldn't stand even being in his office or seeing him anywhere anymore, and I stopped going to my sister's appointments as well. I repressed any semblance of knowledge about him, but subconsciously, I think I knew. I couldn't stand to be around him. He made me so uncomfortable, but I abandoned my sister. I never talked to her about it, and I let her go unguarded to her appointments. I told myself it was only her wrist, and there'd never been a problem before, but the guilt followed. I left her when she needed me, and she didn't even know she needed my protection. I let how uncomfortable I was prevent me from making sure she wasn't. I'd feel shaky and anxious whenever she went to him, and I felt like I couldn't breathe, but I couldn't understand why. She denies he abused her, but I'll never know. What if she repressed it like I did? What if in one of those last appointments something happened and I wasn't there for her? I'll never be able to forgive myself. When the news broke about him, I was panicked. My subconscious fears had been confirmed, and I had left her alone with a predator. She's my sister, and we're supposed to help each other when we need it, and I feel like I let her down, and the guilt will follow me around forever. My dad blames himself, but I thank him. He trusted Larry as a doctor, just like he's supposed to be able to. I thank him because I know that without him here at the appointments, it would have been worse. He may have been there, but Larry always had a funny way of standing in the perfect spot to block his hands. He'd explain what was causing the injury, and then move on to personal questions and funny stories to make my dad laugh when his hands became more invasive. I felt like the more uncomfortable I was, the more talkative he was with my family. Larry was a master manipulator. I think he'd be a great magician since he's so good at misdirection. My dad was always there asking questions, though. He was there, and so it couldn't be worse than whatever he could hide with his own body and the stories he told. Everyone seems to try to comfort me with the fact that he'll likely be abused in prison. But I don't want that. I'm tired of all the suffering and all the sexual abuse, and as terrible as he is, not even him deserves to suffer it. For sentencing, I ask for a year for every girl that has come forward. Each and every one of us deserve more time than that, but it won't help because unless he's immortal, like he is the best doctor in the world, he won't be able to serve all the years he deserves. 1 year for each person will represent all the survivors that have come forward. Your Honor, may I address the defendant? I don't hate you when I look at you. Not when I hear about you or think about you. I only feel a sense of sadness and loss for everything that you've taken from me. For the life I could have lived. When I look at you, I feel empty. But when I think about my dad, I feel angry. I'm so mad with you. With everything you've done to me and every other girl that you could. You didn't just hurt us, you hurt everyone who cares about us. Sometimes I think my dad hurts more than me. I hate you for their suffering, for my coaches, for my mom, for my dad, and every other survivor, parent, and coach. My dad is the one who took me to see you, and he feels overwhelmingly guilty. He's apologized to me so many times, and he hurts because of you. I can see when I look at him, he'll forever be trying to make up for something he didn't do wrong. And I can forgive you for myself. I've passed the point of suffering from you. My family will never recover, though. It doesn't matter how many times I tell my dad he's not guilty, that he couldn't have known and he was trying to do what was best for me. It doesn't matter. This will haunt him forever, but not in the way that it haunts me. I don't know if he'll ever move past it, and I can't forgive you for that part. Maybe if you wanted to be forgiven, but you still seem to be denying all of this. You say you're praying the rosemary every day for forgiveness. Well, praying won't erase your sins, and God won't forgive them. I learned that God will only consider forgiving you if you are truly sorry. But you don't seem to be truly sorry. Nobody who's truly sorry would have continued this for so long. Even when people spoke out against you, you didn't falter. You give your public apologies but deny it in your letter. Some people need your apology, but I do not. I'm tired of you lying and deceiving. I don't need your apology to move on, but you do. You listen to us because you're forced to. You didn't even want to be here. You said in your letter how listening to us might be too painful for you, but I hope somewhere in that brain of yours you remember every word. That way, if you ever admit it to yourself, then you'll be able to know the suffering you've caused. I hope you admit it to yourself so you can pray for forgiveness without denial. That way God can actually consider forgiving you. I want that for you. I keep mentioning God because it's because I know we believe in the same one. My sister loved and trusted you so much, she asked you to be her confirmation sponsor. Do you remember that? You were supposed to be the person she could go to for any questions about her faith. You were the one that she chose to guide her and help her make the choices to live her best life in faith. I guess she chose wrong. Even if you didn't abuse her, you still hurt her. She trusted you and looked up to you, and you betrayed her completely. And I hope you can live with that. We defended you. When the first allegation came out, my family said they'd stick with you. That it was just one, that you could still be her sponsor in a couple weeks. But then the rest came. And she found someone else. I hope she can move on from this too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your statement, Katie. Obviously, you took time to be very thorough and outline everything that happened, both to you and, as you said, to the people that you love and the people who love you. I hope for you, now that these legal proceedings are coming to an end, that will provide some closure. Like you said, you should be studying for exams. You shouldn't be standing in a courtroom. And this will come to an end, and then you won't have to be in a courtroom again. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am, for being here with us. Ms. Mobilitis.
Judge, the next two statements I'm going to read on behalf of those survivors.
Okay.
The next statement is from a victim that we've identified as 248. She is anonymous. She's in Chile. Actually, I think she's probably watching. I hope she is. She has respectfully asked me to hand the defense, and the defendant is sticky note with her name on it, though, so that he will know who this is
Okay.
coming from.
If you give that to Mr. Newberg, that would be fine. He can share that with his client.
Thank you, Your Honor, for listening to my story and everyone else's story. Also, thank you for making the defendant listen as well, as we all deserve our stories to be heard. Larry, this is going to be very short, as I don't want to waste any more of my time on you. I met you when I was a little girl at Great Lakes Gymnastics Club. That is where I also met your now ex-wife, Stephanie. I remember running back into your office to get my ankles or shins wrapped. I remember seeing the smile on your face and hearing your contagious laugh. I remember Stephanie's beauty and talent and thought how lucky you two were to have found each other, a perfect pair. I remember hearing the stories you would tell about life and each other, and pardon me. I remember hearing the stories you would tell about life and gymnastics. I would always find a way to go back there in your office. I remember trusting you and being fascinated by your work. When I was in 6th grade, I left the sport as my father could no longer afford it due to a divorce. That wasn't the end of our relationship, though. I later became a gymnast for my high school, and this is when I began having back problems. The first person that came to mind was Larry Nassar. You were someone I already knew, admired, and trusted. I was so excited to be seen by the Larry Nassar. My father took me to my first appointment. This is when my evaluation was done. I was so amazed and impressed that your office was full of Olympic gymnast pictures, autographs, and memorabilia. I thought to myself, wow, how lucky am I? Someone as well known as Larry would still be willing to work on me and help me with my back. At that first appointment, I was told I'd be back to normal in no time and pain-free. Little did I know the next appointment, and every other appointment that followed, would consist of me being sexually assaulted. The appointments. You told me you had a, quote, non-traditional, end quote, technique, and swore it was the best treatment for my L5 back problem. But never in a million years did I expect what was to happen in your MSU sports medicine office to be the, quote, unquote, non-traditional treatment you had mentioned. Saying these appointments were extremely uncomfortable is an understatement. Words cannot express how I felt and the mixed emotions I had during each and every one of these appointments. I prayed each appointment would end quickly so I could hurry home to take my shower. I have never felt so dirty after each appointment. Every appointment consisted of one of your hands in my vagina doing your vaginal manipulation, while the other forearm was on my lower back. I remember whenever people would knock on the door to come in, you would quickly cover my vaginal area. At the time, I thought it was to keep my private parts just that, private. Instead, now I know it was to hide your disgusting actions. I especially remember the times you noticed I was menstruating and I had a tampon in. You said this technique still needed to be done, so instead of the usual vaginal manipulation, you would do anal manipulation. Wow. Still again, no gloves were worn. It took everything I had to not throw up during those appointments. I eventually stopped going to you because my pain never went away. I thought something was seriously wrong with my back because even Larry Nassar couldn't fix me. It turns out I was just another victim of your personal gratification, and you weren't actually trying to fix my pain. Why I remained silent. I never spoke of these events because why would I question Larry Nassar? Why would I question the go-to doctor who worked with Olympic gymnasts? Why would I question the doctor who had an office on Michigan State University's campus? Why would I question someone I have known since my Great Lakes Gymnastics Club days? Why would I question the doctor that came highly recommended by everyone? Why would I question the person I trusted? I truly thought this was just an uncomfortable technique that would fix my back. I had no reason to doubt your methods. I kept these appointments to myself as I was embarrassed at the length I would go to just to get rid of my back pain. Now, until just recently, Friday, January 26, 2008, to be exact, 1 week ago. I had no clue I was and am one of your victims. I heard about all the women coming forward about you sexually assaulting them, and it never crossed my mind that I could be a victim too. Those days were a dark time in my life I chose to forget about, to lock up those thoughts and feelings and never think about them again. On January 26, I saw the original list of victims, and I saw one of my very best friends, Trinae. I messaged her right away, as I never knew she was sexually assaulted by you too. We never talked about our appointments with you, as so many ladies didn't. Because of the humiliation we felt, and the trust we had in you, that you were doing the right thing. As I read more of the victims' stories and heard their impact statements, it wasn't until then that I realized I am a victim too. What you did to me wasn't for my benefit, to relieve the pain I had in my back. It was simply for your selfish sexual gratification. That day I took 2 showers. I felt dirty the days you did those techniques to me, but years later I felt dirtier than I have ever felt before. All of those feelings have come back a million times. I haven't slept more than a few hours a night since then because those appointments I had with you go through my head. The vision of your face and that contagious laugh you once had now haunt me. My stomach sits in my throat all day and all night. I've had a constant headache that no matter how much Tylenol I take, I can't seem to get rid of. To know I was violated when I was such a little girl is incomprehensible. Why would you prey on young, innocent little girls? You preyed on little girls who trusted you and thought the world of you. You had all of our parents' trust as well. How did you do this for so many years? It is so disgusting. You are one sick monster. Speaking up about it. As hard as it was to go through those horrible appointments, for me it is harder to admit it to people. I am still an unknown victim to the public and always will be. I don't want people to look at me like I am an alien. I don't want people to ask the questions that are inevitable to follow. I want to be remembered as the gymnast I was, not as your victim. Truly, I am too ashamed to tell people now that I once was a gymnast. I actually asked my husband to never mention it to anyone that I was a gymnast in fear that that would be the first question anyone will ask. Are you a victim of Larry Nassar? But you know who I am. Trinae was the very first person I told and confided in to make sure I wasn't crazy and to make sure I too was a victim before I spoke up. I then got the courage to tell my husband when he asked me about it. This was difficult. I've known my husband for 17 years now, and we've been together for 15 years. This is the second time I've ever seen or heard my husband cry. It has been awkward, as he doesn't know how to act around me, and quite frankly, I don't know how to act either. I am at the point where I refuse to tell my father. He was a single parent trying to help his daughter get rid of my pain that often put me in tears. He is a cancer survivor, but this would kill him. He would die knowing he took me to Larry only to be sexually assaulted. So for the rest of our lives, I will keep this deep, dark secret from him to save him from the pain this would cause him. Larry, I hope you get the medical help you desperately need. I hope one day you can answer the questions that so many of us have. I hope one day you can give us survivors a sincere apology, as we so much deserve. In time, I will try to forgive you, and maybe someday I will be able to pray for you, but not now. I'm not ready for that. This is all I have to say to Larry at this time. Again, thank you, Your Honor, for listening to my words. I appreciate the time I was given. Victim number 248.
Thank you very much, victim 248. If you are watching, because you're anonymous, I have to just use the number, and that makes me feel bad. So I will call you Anonymous in Chile. Thank you for taking the time to write the statement. I hope that by writing the statement and sending it into the court and making the statement to the defendant and letting him know that you were talking to him helps you on your road to recovery. Thank you.
I have one more statement, Your Honor, to read. I believe, well, we have a few live victims, but we're going to read a few.
Pardon me?
We're
I'm
going to
sorry.
read a few read on behalfs at this
Okay.
point. The next one I will read on behalf of as well, and it is another anonymous. It is victim number 252. Somewhere between 1988 and 1990, Larry performed the medical procedure on me. I was between 10 and 12 years old. I loved gymnastics but had already experienced my fair share of nagging injuries. At the time, I was dealing with a tailbone injury. Larry invited me, along with several other gymnasts, to his apartment in Delta Township to help him with research he was doing for MSU, as well as to help us with our injuries. When I arrived with my mother, he first had me do some things for his research. He then had me take a bath at his apartment. I was uncomfortable with this as I didn't even take baths at my friends' houses, but the other girls had done it, so I didn't say anything. He then had me get on his table without any underwear or bottoms of any kind. He put a towel over my pelvic area. He told my mother and I that this treatment would fix my tailbone injury. He inserted his fingers into my vagina and into my anus. I do not remember how long it took, but for me it seemed to last a long time. It was not pleasant and it made me very uncomfortable. Afterwards, we left and I was not seen by Larry at his apartment again. Larry, in your letter last week, you said that this was a medical procedure and it fixed us. I will say it did not address my pain in the tailbone, but it does not mean it wasn't sexual assault. I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat that. I will say it did address my pain in my tailbone, but it does not mean it wasn't sexual assault. While my mother thought you were a doctor, in reality, you had barely begun medical school. You did not have informed consent, as you did not provide any alternative treatments, the risks and benefits of the procedure, and/or the alternatives. You are not licensed as a medical professional or doctor to conduct treatments on patients. You were not in a medical office and did not have any other medical professional present at the time of the quote-unquote procedure. I was 12 or under and did not understand the area of my body or what you were doing to me. I did not realize those areas existed and that anything, let alone your fingers, could go into those areas. You violated me for your own gratification, and the way you did it leads me to believe I was not the first. You had already figured out how to earn the trust of gymnasts and their parents, and the excuses you needed to violate them without their knowledge or suspicion. I have always wondered why that day is so etched in my memory, but had never allowed myself to explore that. It wasn't until last week when I heard other gymnasts speak about their experience of being invited to help you with a research project at your apartment that I realized it was almost exactly what happened to me that day almost 30 years ago. This is when I finally allowed myself to come to terms with the fact that you violated me physically and emotionally. That is why I've never forgotten that day and remember it like it was yesterday. The disgust I feel, not just for myself, but for the victims and their families, is immense. I will be in therapy trying to work through all of this, but I will work through it. This will not defeat me nor define me. It has defeated you, and it will define you. I hope you get the help you clearly need. You will be judged in the end by the only judge that matters, and that is not me. I plan to try to turn what you did to me and all the other victims into a positive experience by forcing myself, others, and society to look at ourselves and the systems we have in place. We need to catch the other Larry Nassars that are already out there and try to prevent any new ones from being successful. This epidemic in our society allowed you to flourish in our midst under the guise of being a world-renowned medical doctor that we were lucky enough to have treat us. I hope to help lead the charge to eradicate it from our society and not just the areas that allowed you to flourish. I hope to force change so that my children get to live in a very different society than that I grew up in and allowed you to happen. Victim 252.
I really appreciate her sharing her story, and I hope that, again, just by writing a statement, I hope that provides some help.
Thank you, Judge. Your Honor, the next, here. I didn't finish my thought, did I?
That's okay.
The next survivor statement will be read by Ms. Liddell. She has given us permission to identify her,
Okay.
and I think it might be helpful if I just put her name on the screen. I thought of this earlier.
Is that
This is Ms. Lindley Phillips.
Lindley Phillips, correct?
Linlee, Phillips, common spelling.
Okay.
When I was first approached about flying out to Michigan to read a victim impact statement, I thought I would want to take part and speak my truth. However, as the time drew closer, I realized I couldn't handle the situation for so many reasons. I made a bunch of excuses about the time commitment, money, and work, but ultimately, I just didn't want to face him or think about how this man has impacted my life. So as I sat silent, watching and listening to other survivors tell their stories, after seeing the testimonies, I realized how important it is for me to share my truth, show my support as a survivor, and try and gain some closure from this horrible event. February 20th, 2017. That was the morning I saw his name on television, and the course of my life was forever changed. I immediately felt sick to my stomach, but in the same moment, relief for being right. I turned to my wife and said, I knew it. I knew in that moment that what had been done to me was wrong and not the legitimate medical procedure he made it out to be. I had buried it for over 15 years, but in my gut, I always knew it was wrong. I felt the same way sitting in my living room in 2017 as I did as a young, naive girl in Nassar's office in 2002. My body froze. I felt numb. I was paralyzed, like something was wrong, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Except this time I could. This time I knew. This time his secret was out. When I spoke to the Michigan State Police to report my abuse later that day, I cried harder than I ever knew I could cry, but came to discover that this was my new normal. I cried for days, retreating from my wife, my family, my friends, and my life. I had a hard time teaching and finishing assignments for graduate school, let alone keeping up with my day-to-day tasks. This went on for weeks. Finally, with the encouragement of my wife, I sought much-needed help. I began speaking with a therapist who recommended eye movement desensitization and reprocessing EDMR therapy. She diagnosed me with PTSD, but not from 2002, because in 2002, I didn't understand what had happened. She says my PTSD is from the moment I read about it on the news in 2017. This therapy is very intense and continues to be ongoing. As far as a victim impact statement, I've only known for a year and just scratched the surface on how this is going to impact my life. I will forever be someone who uses #MeToo. I'm impacted and scared to know how all of this will manifest throughout the course of my life. I have had to deal with many feelings of failure for not recognizing that he was abusing me. I felt that I should have known. I couldn't look my dad in the eye when I told him because he raised a more self-aware daughter. My parents raised someone who would stand up for herself and speak out, but I didn't. I didn't because I didn't know. I trusted him and was honored to be seen by him. I hung all my hopes on him getting me better before nationals, but he didn't help me. My groin still hurts, and now I'm stuck with dealing with this horrific nightmare for the rest of my life in ways that are yet to be seen. Now, I refuse to go to male doctors after being violated by Nassar. Do you know how hard that is? I live in rural southern Delaware, and there are very few doctors. It's hard to be picky. As a result, I put off going to the chiropractor for over a year because he was male. I haven't been to see my male family doctor since I heard the news. I changed my gynecologist to a female. In addition, I am unfortunately having difficulty getting pregnant, and the only fertility specialist in the area is a male. So, do I give up on trying to get pregnant or find a way to endure the psychological anguish and see this male doctor? What an awful reality. Thanks, Nassar. Also,
I now question whether all of this stress has affected my ability to get pregnant. Who knows? As a lesbian who has never been with a man, to know a man's unwanted fingers have been inside me makes me want to curl up and fade away. Who am I now? I have always had a lot of pride in my identity as a lesbian and confidence in knowing who I was at such a young age. Nassar has taken that away from me. To MSU, an institution that let me down, whose coaches sat in my living room and told my parents that they would take care of me 600 miles from home. How do I reconcile my love and my pride for a school who put me in the direct line of fire of a pedophile? A school who now claims no responsibility because it's beyond the statute of limitations, a 3-year limitation? Well, MSU, I've only known for 1 year, and I reported the same day I found out. Shame on you for trying to sidestep any responsibility for what happened to me under your watch when you clearly knew all along. I once was strong, lighthearted, and optimistic. I miss the girl I wish I could get back to her. I feel forever changed, and that makes me so sad. My goal is for one day to feel like this is just something that happened to me and does not define my future. I hope to learn from this and use it as a platform to help others. Unfortunately, at this moment, this realization of what has occurred has shattered the world I once knew and has changed my trajectory forever.
I thank her for submitting her impact statement, and although she said she did not want to face him, by writing her statement and sharing her truth, she has faced him. And so I thank her for that.
The next, Your Honor, would be victim 52. She wishes to be publicly identified. Her name is Cassie Castle.
Ms. Adele, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Cassie Castle. I would first like to thank everyone who has helped me get here to make this statement. I started gymnastics at Twist Stars at the age of 7. I was a very hyper child, so gymnastics stole my heart from the start. I was 11 years old when I first became injured. I fell on a beam and dislocated 3 ribs. I was immediately taken to Larry to be examined. That is when my nightmare began. Although it didn't seem much like a nightmare, I was 11 and I was seeing the best doctor the sport had known. I would read books about Mary Lou Retton and Dominique Moceanu, and to share a doctor with them was indescribable. I knew that if he could make these Olympic gymnasts feel no pain, then he could easily help me. Plus, half of my friends already seen him for treatment, so the initial trust was easy to come by. Gymnastics was no cakewalk. It was mentally, physically, and emotionally draining, but it was worth it for the sport we loved. Yet, throughout the hard times, we thought we had a friend. We thought we had someone to confide in, to vent to, but how wrong we all were. We were just feeding the monster with our innocence, allowing him to gain our trust and to manipulate and abuse us in any way he pleased. My parents hold immense guilt for how naive they were. After 6 appointments where my mom was present, Larry convinced my mother to wait in the waiting room instead of being in the room because I was uncomfortable with an audience. He assured my mother that I would have the utmost care, and without even thinking about the consequences, my support walked out of the room. The treatment started when I was 11, but I didn't start to realize anything was wrong until I was 13. I complained to my mother about bleeding. Being so young, I did not know if it were lady issues or not. It definitely was not. It was rectal bleeding, and shortly after, I discovered I had a hemorrhoid. I felt disgusting. What was wrong with me? Why was one of my concerns as a 12-year-old a stained leotard from spotting? I was beyond embarrassed. My mom asked Larry about the procedure, and he assured her it was from my sciatic nerve, and that was where the bleeding was coming from, and that type of bleeding was common. Concerned, my mother started talking to other moms about it, and sure enough, their daughters were getting similar treatments, which seemed to ease my mother's troubled thoughts. When I was 14, I actually started to rebel against the abuse. Well, at least I tried. I would fight my mother not to go to my appointments. I would tell her how I didn't want the readjustments done, but she had no other choice. As a gymnast, I was required to see Larry, and the only way to get better is to be seen. So my mom did what she needed to do and took me there to get my injuries fixed. Little did she know that she was sending me away to my abuser. When I was 15, my mom really started making a fuss among the gym, expressing her concern to my rebellion to other moms and questioning Larry's, quote, methods. With our community being so tight-knit, word spreads fast. Larry started to scramble, and all of a sudden my family friends turned into a threat. Knowing that I had a disease in my spine and a problem with my neck, he warned me that I could become paralyzed if I continued my career. As a 15-year-old, I was terrified. I made a decision that day to let my team down, my parents down, and myself down. I let a doctor who was physically abusing me, emotionally abuse me, and take away my dream. To this day, I will never be able to get back what I lost, never being able to make my father proud, never finishing of what I so desperately wanted, and missing out on the memories with the people I grew up with. I went into a spiraling depression, which required years of therapy. When this case first came to light, it was an instant aha moment. I knew this man was a monster, but being a child, you often get silenced or your opinion is irrelevant, but no longer. I refuse to let this control me anymore. I am strong. I am a woman who will carry my scars, but they will no longer be my wounds. I have been a victim for 11 years, but as of today, I am a survivor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for writing the statement. I'm glad that through the process of writing her statement that she realizes that she does no longer have to be a victim and that she's a survivor. And thank her very much. Ms. Pavlidis, how many, I know we need to take an afternoon break.
This might be a good spot.
Or do you have one more written statement?
We have 3 more written statements. Ms. Snyder was going to be reading those, I believe. So if you want her to read 1 or 2 or both, I need her to come up here. She was she's hiding from me.
Yeah, well, yeah. I just know that everybody's going to need an afternoon break, so a brief break.
Just one. Okay. Your Honor, the next survivor's name is Sarah Allen. SARAHALLEN.
First off, I want to thank you, Judge, for allowing me to tell my story. I wish I could be there in person, but this man is not worth taking time off and using my paid time off from work to be there. I want to also say thank you to Rachel for stepping forward and opening everyone's eyes to what was happening. It took so much courage on your part, and I know that this has not been an easy journey for you. Lastly, I want to say thank you to all the other survivors for coming forward and sharing your story and giving me strength to come forward and share my story. My story is no different than anyone else's. I was a gymnast and was taught that Larry was the best. He was a friend to coaches, athletes, and parents. He built this trust with everyone around him. When I was 10 years old and pinched a nerve in my back, that was the first time I had the procedure done to me. This happened to me 3 other times within a 3-year period. He always asked how my back was, and even if I said it was fine, he would want to see it to make sure it was aligned. It was weird and awkward, but he did it to all my teammates, so who was I to say it was not a correct procedure? This man cared about us. I mean, he even invited us to his wedding. When I was 12, I hurt my knee bad and ended up having knee construction done. When you are an injured gymnast, you still come to practice, but you basically condition the whole time. Well, I was 2 weeks post-op with no pressure on my leg to walk. I was told by my coach that I could swing bars since I didn't have to use my leg. Larry came in and saw that and took me right off bars and told me to go home and not to come back for a couple weeks because I had to rest my knee so I could heal. That showed me he did care for all the gymnasts. He stuck up for all of us when we were hurt. Fast forward 16 months ago when everything first came out. We were all in shock. My parents stood up for you, Larry. Lots of gym parents, coaches, and athletes were standing up for you. These parents knew the procedure you were doing to their children, and they still stood behind you. Why? Because you were trusted, and you were Larry Nassar. I reminded my parents of the times you did it to me, and they still told me, at the age of 33, that you were doing a medical procedure to help my back. You wouldn't hurt a fly, and they proceeded to tell me not to get involved. That's why I kept my mouth shut. After everyone came forward and gave their speeches and told their stories, my parents were in shock. They haven't stopped saying sorry to me, and they feel so bad. I do not hold this against them, though. This is your fault. All my nightmares I have had since having a child 11 years ago of someone sexually molesting him. This was your doing. My biggest fear is that someone is going to sexually molest my son or daughters, and that is because of you. I always wondered where this fear came from, and I finally realized it. It came from you, Larry. You betrayed everyone's trust. I have so much guilt for all my gymnasts I sent to you, or all the other girls I sent to you with back problems, and I just hope and pray you didn't do to them what you did to everyone else. You have ruined so many lives because of the trust everyone had in you. You are a disgusting human being, and I could not be happier that you will be locked away for the rest of your life.
Please tell Ms. Allen that I said thank you for her taking the time to submit her impact statement. Ms. Povalides, do you wish to take a break at this time, or do you have others that you would like to do first?
I think now would be a good time for a break.
Okay.
All rise.
Larry had done to me. I wasn't sure if what had happened to me qualified as sex. I didn't know at 13 that sexual abuse is much more than having unwanted sex. I felt ashamed, violated, and dirty. But I would bury that experience so deep inside of me that I wouldn't think of it again. Then came 2016, and my mom sent me the article about Larry sexually abusing all these girls. Their stories are almost spot on with mine. I instantly told my mom that what happened all those years ago, and I can tell that she was horrified. I struggled with coming forward because I wasn't ready to talk about it with the world yet. I thought watching my abuser get sentenced to spending the rest of his natural life in prison would bring me some closure. Unfortunately, it did no such thing. I felt like I had cheated that little girl out of doing the right thing again. I could not let her fall silent once again. So here I am today to do the right thing and bring this to an end for my family and I. Your Honor, I have written a letter that I would like to read to the defendant, if I may. Larry, I'm here today because in order for me to continue the healing process, I need to get some things off my chest. I have harbored an unbelievable amount of hatred for you over the last year and a half, but this hate is all-consuming. I do not wish to carry it with me any longer. My courage to stand up to you today comes from the sister survivors who spoke their minds for 6 days straight. I wish you were half the man we believed you were. You took advantage of my trust in you as a medical professional 3 times. That's nothing compared to the women who were exposed to your perversions for years. My heart truly breaks for them. If I had been subjected to these treatments for half as long as they were, I would have ended my life for sure. The strength these women have is contagious. You have altered my life in the following ways. 1, I was diagnosed with anxiety last year, a condition that has affected almost every relationship I have. It affects work, my school, my love life. It leaves me feeling out of control and scared, sort of the way we all felt when we walked into your office. 2, sexual abuse comes with so many hardships. For me, the hardest is seeing my boyfriend of 3 years deal with my trauma from it all. This man has loved and respected me unconditionally for over 3 years. It doesn't matter how madly in love I am with him. The thought of you makes becoming intimate nearly impossible. When my anxiety is high, even just a hand on my waist reminds me of my visits. When this happens to me, I don't know if I'm going to cry or throw up. 3, you have damaged the relationships I have with healthcare professionals. It has been so difficult to talk to a therapist. Being here today has nothing on therapy. This is truly liberating. With all the negative you have brought me and my family, I have learned so much about myself and life. I now know that you should always speak up if something doesn't seem right. I learned that no matter how nice someone may seem, they could still be harboring a dark and dangerous secret. I learned that I am never afraid, as afraid as I think I am. I learned to trust my gut. Most importantly, I learned that my struggles are what has made me into the person standing before you today. I am brave, I am strong, and I am worth it. But Larry, I am so much bigger than you. After all the horrible things I felt and all the tears I've shed, I cannot leave you and the things you did to me in the past without first attempting to forgive. I cannot speak for the hundreds of women you have abused in your years as a doctor, but I can speak for myself. I think I deserve an apology for what you did to me. My mom deserves an apology for deceiving her and forcing this guilt upon her and my family. If you are truly remorseful for these repulsive acts, then I would like to offer you my forgiveness. After all the court dates and meetings with your lawyers is said and done, you will be left alone to rot in a prison cell for the rest of your life. But your true judgment day will be with the Lord. And if I were you, I would start making my peace with the man upstairs. The men in prison aren't too fond of pedophiles. You never know when your day with the Lord will come.
Well, I would say, Elena, I'm very glad that you did not stay silent and that you found the courage to write your impact statement and submitted your impact statement and allowed it to be read. I hope in some small way going through this process is going to help you in your road of recovery. Thank you. Keller, thank you very much.
The next, Your Honor, is listed as victim 253 on your list.
I'm sorry, that was too fast.
253.
A victim 253 does not want to be identified?
Just by her first name. Her first name is Amanda.
Amanda?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm 12 years old. My story begins with a knee injury where we first met and got to know each other. Then the real abuse started when I pulled my oblique muscles. I was 10, only 10 years old. It was on a Friday. My mom and my mom's friend was in the room when you assaulted me. It's hard for me even to think of what you did. Larry, you shattered my life. I defended you. I trusted you. You used me. I have nightmares. I wake up in the middle of the night sweating. I have a hard time sleeping, and I'm always uncomfortable. But I'm strong. I will fight through this. So to deal with my anger and sadness, I've been writing a poem. And the following, Your Honor, is a poem that she has wrote. Where I'm from. I am from the time I landed on the beam. The smell of chalk roamed freely. I am from my darkest time, tears rolling down my face. I am from the time I had experienced something that would be in every parent's nightmare. The time where there were suicidal thoughts. I am from the time of sadness where each statement counted. I am from family where things used to be closed. I have gained pain and sadness, the horror that comes to mind when I envision what he did to me. I am from the past. Past may never be forgotten, but there is nothing we can change. However, we decide our futures, the happy moments. I fall from the past, but land in the future. You see, I am tough, and I hope I never see you again, ever. And that is victim 253, Amanda.
Did I hear you right? Is Amanda only 12 years of age?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, Amanda, it took a lot of bravery to write your statement and to write that poem, and I appreciate that, and I'm very sorry that at age 12 she had to do that, but I hope in some way it helps her.
The next, Your Honor, is victim 250. And Your Honor, we're unsure as to whether or not she wants to be publicly identified or anonymous, so we'll just leave her at anonymous.
Right,
at
that's
250.
probably, if we're not sure, that's
Right.
the more prudent course of action.
This is victim 250. Here it is. It's been an absolute nightmare to see the doctor I trusted for half my life exposed as someone who abuses children. He hurt my sister and did this procedure to me many times, promising me that it would help. He has caused so much damage, but I will not let this define me. I am still proud to be a Spartan, and I am hoping for healing for all.
them $250 for taking the time to write, and I agree with you. We hope for healing for all.
Your Honor, the next statement I will read on behalf of the survivor. They have asked me, the parents have to submit her photograph just to you.
But they will allow her to okay. All right. What number was it, Ms. Pavlidis?
237.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I'm reading the statement of Elizabeth Bauer. Bauer. Is that how I pronounce it? Bauer? Bauer. Thank you. I needed a little help. Thank you. No offense. Larry, I hate you. I wish that's all there was to say, but it's not. You abused me and took advantage of me at the age of 10. I was in 5th grade, and I didn't even know what sexual abuse was and what it meant to be sexually abused. But I sure as heck know what it means to be a victim of sexual abuse now. I know and understand you are the reason behind some of my trust issues and problems with certain individuals. Never have I before been so afraid of being hurt by someone I trusted so dearly. You acted as my friend, but little did I know that you were slowly grooming me for your own good. Over 150 girls have decided to speak in front of you to put you into the hell you deserve to be in. Now think about all the others who haven't stood up here because they don't even want to be in the same room as you. Larry, you are the only person who truly knows how many girls were abused that are fighting to get you out of this world that you didn't belong in the first place. The after-hour office visits and letting me go to your house was a completely unacceptable event, but you made me think that it was normal doctor behavior. You made me feel safe, at home, and almost like a kid of yours. But if I was really someone you cared about, you wouldn't have abused me like this. My life was gymnastics, and others has been drastically changed because of your selfishness, and I believe no amount of time in prison can change that. Not only have you changed me, you have changed the people that truly care about me. My parents, they feel guilty and they didn't do a single thing wrong. They were in the same room as their child who was being abused and they had no clue. Not only did you hurt and fool me, you hurt and fooled them. A lifetime of not being able to trust people, being scared of boys who cross my path, and worst of all, making my parents feel guilty for your actions isn't equal to thousands of years in prison. Elizabeth Maher.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for making your statement. I appreciate you sharing the photograph with me, which is depicting how young and how innocent you looked at the time. Thank you very much.
We have had a number of folks who had contacted our office indicating a desire to give impact statements. They have not yet appeared in court, nor have they provided those statements to be read on their behalf. I will get an accurate count as I do some accounting. Obviously, if anyone contacts us, we will have them submit that to you, and I will do that over the weekend as well. What that brings us to is our final two speakers,
Okay.
and they will both be publicly identified, and they will both speak to you themselves. They both spoke in Ingham County so eloquently and have expressed an interest in speaking here as well. And the first survivor I am pleased to introduce you to is Lois LaVoice.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Thanks. We have witnessed a monumental moment in history. Brave, courageous women and girls coming forward, shedding their Jane Doe, and sharing their heart-wrenching stories for the world to hear. To those who have not yet come forward, and I'm sure there are hundreds, please know that we have your back also. We will believe you even if you have not yet come to terms with the betrayal and abuse. Together, we are a strong army that is changing the world for the better. To Larry Nassar, don't forget. Don't forget the hurt, the pain you've inflicted on hundreds of lives
with your selfish actions. Not just your immediate victims, but their families as well. I will ask you again, who knew what you were doing and looked the other way? Please share with us who knew. Who questioned you throughout the years? Take a deep look inside your heart. Examine it carefully and turn to God for repentance and forgiveness. Your actions have hurt so many. And to the media, don't forget. Don't let this just be a top story while it's happening. This is a life-changing time in our society, in our culture, and in our world. Don't forget us when it's over. Keep talking about it. Keep talking about the changes that need to take place. Keep talking about it so that others can speak up with their own stories. The more we discuss the topic of sexual abuse, the more our culture will be forced into change. Victims will feel more comfortable to come forward and share their truths. The more we talk about it, the less we will feel like we have to hide in the shadows. And to the world listening, don't forget. Don't forget that this happened. Know that it is happening all around you. Be vigilant, be aware, and ask the difficult questions. Blind trust is dangerous. Educate yourselves and your children about the red flags of predators and abuse. Have those tough conversations over and over and over again. Even if you don't believe someone who raises concerns, that's not your call to make. Always, always report. Thankfully, 20 years later, after at least 17 MSU employees were told about Nassar's inappropriate treatments, someone was believed. Detective Andrea Munford believed. Rachel Den Hollander. Angie Povolitis believed. And the rest is history. To those who have been named as enablers in this case and blindly trusted Nassar over the concerns of children and women, I want you to know that I pray for you. Now is your time to speak up. You have a second chance to do the right thing. I hope and pray that you can be transparent and willing to admit that you missed this. Teach our country and the world how you missed this. Own up to your mistakes. Don't let those mistakes bind you up and hold you captive. I believe there's an opportunity for you to stand up and redeem these mistakes by doing the right thing now. And to the women who have bravely stepped forward, I reference the song by Audra Day, Rise Up. You're broken down and you're tired. I'll rise up. I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up and I'll rise unafraid. And I'll do it 1,000 times again. I'll rise up in spite of the ache, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other. When I think about these lyrics and about the strength of all these women have, my sisters, they have risen up and they have spoken their truths. Don't forget. Don't forget those truths that you heard these past few weeks. Don't forget me. Don't forget my story. Don't forget the 265 Me Too's. Don't forget us. Together, we can make this world a better place for the children coming after us. Together, we are stronger. Together, let's be the change we wish to see in this world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Voice. I appreciate your statements.
And just as in Eaton County, I think it's fitting that we end with the woman that began this case. And just as I said in Ingham County, I think it bears repeating here. When I first met her, there was no doubt in my mind and in my heart that one day we'd be before a judge such as Your Honor at a hearing such as this, sentencing the defendant for the abuse he committed against her. She was earnest and hardworking and truthful and absolutely dedicated to getting to the bottom of this and holding this on her back for many months until others came forward publicly. I am pleased to present to you Rachel Denhollander, who will be our last victim impact statement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to begin by thanking you for giving all of us the opportunity to speak the truth and to reclaim our voices. Having experienced the devastating loss of control that takes place in sexual assault, the ability to speak the truth and be heard is not something I take for granted. I, too, am a victim of Larry Nassar. I, too, have a story much like the ones you have heard today from the other courageous women who have spoken over the last 2 days. But today I am not here for myself. I am here on behalf of the charged victims in Eaton County. I am here to lend my voice and my story to the power of what they have already communicated to you in an effort to see justice done on their behalf. This is the third time I have had the privilege of making a statement in court on behalf of the little girls Larry violated, but the ability to speak on their behalf is something I have waited for and fought for 17 years, and I am grateful to be able to do it again. Today, as I have done before in 2 other courts, I ask you to remember the dual aims of this court: the protection of the innocent and the administration of justice. The protection of the innocent, because the message you send today through your sentence will carry the power of deterrence to any pedophile who is watching. And the administration of justice, because what was done to these women and little girls matters, and they need to know that. And while there are many factors that you must take into account at sentencing, and I recognize that, I submit to you, Judge Cunningham, that the preeminent question you must answer is the same question that has faced every judge in every court case. How much is a little girl worth? How much are these women worth? Sexual predators are not as scarce as we like to think, and the number of potential little girls who may be used as objects of gratification are untold. The truth is, you and I don't know how many little girls could be saved by the deterrent message that I am asking you to send, but I do know one thing. Those little girls, wherever and whoever they may be, are worth everything. They are worth every measure of protection you can offer. They are worth the full weight of justice. They are worth doing everything in your power and mine to spare them the pain of living in a nightmare they cannot escape. 17 years ago, I walked through Larry's exam room door with chronic back pain, and I walked out changed forever. For nearly a year, I believed Larry was performing legitimate internal pelvic floor procedures on me, a procedure that I actually knew existed at 15 by virtue of having friends who were physical therapists who practiced legitimate internal pelvic floor work. What I did not know was that what Larry was doing to me did not in any way, shape, or form resemble legitimate pelvic floor procedures. What I did not know was that Larry had none of the specialized training or certification that would have allowed him to practice legitimate internal pelvic floor work. What I did not know was that no one was supervising Larry, no one was establishing protocols or ensuring they were followed, and no one at MSU had properly handled at least 4 prior disclosures of sexual abuse given to MSU employees years before I walked in his door. My trust in Larry and my trust in the authority figures around me was wielded like a weapon. I left violated, humiliated, and degraded, carrying wounds I did not even understand and struggled for years to heal from. My ability to trust and see anything as safe was shattered. Every facet of my life radically altered by what Larry chose to do. The rigors of law school and working in public policy greatly compounded by fear and constant vulnerability, and the intrusion of memories I did not want whenever any issues related to sexual assault came up. The joys of meeting my husband, becoming engaged, getting married, having children, all became intertwined with nightmares and fears and false shame.
Everything from the most difficult things I ever accomplished in life to the simplest tasks of standing in line or riding in an elevator became exponentially more difficult. The impact of sexual assault is limitless, and it defies description. It is a horror no little girl or woman should have to face. And I submit that the little girls who could be spared this damage through a strong deterring message sent by your sentence are worth every measure you can offer. They are worth all of my effort, and now every measure you can provide. The second aim of this court is to provide justice for the wrongs already done. And here, too, you must answer the question, how much is a little girl worth? Except the little girls who demand justice today are no longer unknown and uncertain. We know their names. You know their faces. We have, with great courage, shared the most painful parts of their stories with you. You have seen the photos of the little girls that they were, the ones who were so young and so innocent, whose trust in childhood, rather than being cherished for the gift it was weaponized against them in the cruelest way possible. Larry is the most dangerous type of predator, capable of creating a caring and engaging outward persona designed specifically to manipulate parents and victims. He deliberately entered into relationships with children he knew were vulnerable, children who had experienced prior abuse or loss, children suffering extreme pain, for the sole purpose of using their need for protection and their need for healing against them. He weaponized his charity work for special needs children, his volunteer work for athletes, and his, quote, free appointments to those without insurance, and used it all as a steady stream to insure victims to assault in the most vile manner, children as young as 6. And as if that were not enough, most often he assaulted us in front of our own parents, forcing mothers and fathers to unwittingly witness their own children being violated and robbed of their innocence. He made it appear to us that our parents could see what was happening and consented, using the trust in the person we loved the most, our mother, like a weapon. He devastated children, and he devastated families. Unless the sterile words of our legal system and statutes obscure what was really taking place and the depth of the evil he committed, let me state it plainly. Larry engaged in degrading and humiliating sexual acts on very young children because he liked it. Our pain and our humiliation and our suffering was sexually arousing to him. He took sexual satisfaction in stripping children as young as 6 of their clothes and their dignity, their privacy and their bodies. He groped and fondled and penetrated, and then he asked us how it felt because he wanted to know. A grown man found sexual pleasure in the sexual humiliation and suffering of children. Little children who now stand before you as young women with justice yet to be done on their behalf. For 17 years, as I began to realize in bits and pieces what had happened to me and the depths of evil that Larry was capable of, the weight of knowing so many children would be walking through his door and my inability to protect them was crushing. And as these last 18 months have unfolded, one of the most painful parts was every case update I would receive, hearing more numbered Jane Doe designations, and knowing what that meant. I felt like I saw the little girls who walked in his door in my own baby girls, in all the little children I had coached for years. And so many times, when my children were finally in bed for the night, I would stand in the middle of my kitchen and I would cry. And I wondered over and over as my husband held me, and I would cry, who is going to find these little girls? Who is going to reach out to these women and tell them how much they matter? That what they have gone through matters, and it's not unseen. Who is going to tell these Jane Does that they are valued and treasured and worth everything? Who is going to tell the little girls how much they are worth? I have done everything I can, and I would do it over again in a heartbeat. But I cannot give these girls justice. That is not my job. It is yours. So I am asking you to tell these little girls, tell the young women, tell the watching world that they are worth everything. worth the greatest measure of justice available under the plea agreement, worth every protection the law can offer. Tell them they are seen. Tell them they are heard. Tell them they matter. We all know what the answer should be when we are faced with the question, how much is a little girl worth? I am asking today that you impose everything available under the plea agreement, because everything is what they are worth. And may the rest of the world begin to live out that answer as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to be here today, Rachel. The one thing that you said that I think, as the last victim to speak today and give a statement, is so accurate, is that the impact of sexual assault is limitless. Thank you very, very much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Okay, so where are we at in the legal proceedings? This is where we are at. All of the impact statements have been heard, as I believe you heard Ms. Povolitis say earlier today. There were a few statements that were presented to me that the victims did not want those statements shared with the press or anyone else. So I have those and will review those. The next step in the process is to allow the prosecutor, in this case the Attorney General, an opportunity to make their statement, their summation, and then express to me what they believe the proper penalty should be. Then there is the opportunity for the defense counsel to make a statement. And as in every criminal case, there will be an opportunity for the defendant himself to make a statement if he chooses to do so. A defendant is not required to speak, but they are given the opportunity to speak. Once that occurs, then the court will issue its sentencing by going through the factors that I am required to consider as a matter of law before issuing the final sentence. Obviously, in the last few days, a lot of information has been provided, and we will use the weekend to go through all of the information, assimilate it, and then we will be back here Monday. So we will start Monday at 9 a.m. with Ms. Povolitis giving her closing statement or argument, if you will, in the sentencing, then the defense, and then I will be prepared immediately thereafter to sentence the defendant. Thank you all very much. That's all for the record for now.
All rise.